Another week in Trump's America, and another attempt to crack down on dissent and free speech, and really anybody who disagrees with that guy in charge. This time, the administration has put a target on the back of left-wing groups and prominent progressive voices by connecting them, stay with me on this, to Cuba. Last week, the State Department released a 100-page report called Cuba, the Capital of 21st Century Communism. And it ties left-wing advocacy groups inside the United States to Cuba, the beleaguered Caribbean nation. The report leads like a throwback to the Red Scare. Feels like it's something like out of 70 years ago. It resurrects decades-old allegations that Cuba spent years orchestrating Cold War-era subversion. This is happening now, and that the small island nation is trying to corrupt America from within, using the left here in our country. I mean, this report reads like a spy novel. It says Cuba has been at the center of this, quote, many of the most significant upheavals in recent American political history, from the George Floyd riots to the rise of Antifa. The report labels Black Lives Matter a far-left organization influenced by Cuba. It claims Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is part of a broader national effort to make Cuban communism, in the words of the report, quote, mainstream. And it calls out influential progressives, including Hassan Piker and New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani, Amazon labor union co-founder Christian Smalls, and the 23-year-old daughter of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Former U.S. diplomat Orna Blum wrote on her Substack that several people at the State Department told her the report did not go through, quote, the standard tracking process by which documents get assigned, drafted, and cleared for publication. According to Blum, this likely indicates that this report, quote, was probably written and cleared by a small circle of political appointees at state and at the National Security Council, perhaps with outside input. Blum says she was told, quote, career diplomats are floored by the sloppy writing, by the attempted history lecture, and most of all, by how undisguised the attempt is to make a foreign policy report into an election season blacklist. The language in the report, and coming from the White House itself, is almost just copy and paste Senator Joe McCarthy. 1952, warning about communists hiding in plain sight.
One communist on the faculty of one university is one communist too many. Even if there are only one communist in the State Department, that would still be one communist too many.
That was Joe McCarthy. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is of Cuban descent, on July 16th.
The Cuban regime's sprawling intelligence and ideological network helped to build the far left in our country and in our hemisphere. And it remains inextricably linked to the far left groups and movements across and beyond the West.
This Cuban boogeyman that Marco Rubio is describing involves the current Cuba that has been living under a 60-year U.S. economic embargo and a 6-month-long U.S. naval oil blockade that has led to 2 weeks of rolling blackouts and severe food shortages, public health challenges. It's the same country, by the way, that Trump told reporters last month that had, quote, sort of collapsed. So let me get this straight. You are telling me that, according to the State Department, Cuba is simultaneously a nation in collapse and a country powerful enough to shape major political movements across the United States of America? Give me a break. This is not to say that the Cuban government has not done bad things over the years, mistreating and disenfranchising some citizens, repressing free speech, denying them democracy, keeping close ties to governments that are hostile to America. But the report doesn't even present evidence of a vast Cuban command structure that is directing all of this American activist activity from behind the scenes. It's all circumstantial and ideological links, and that is dangerous, obviously, because throughout American history, accusations of foreign influence have often been used to cast suspicion on political movements that challenge the status quo, that challenge people in power, because it's not so much the Cuba of it all. It is the fact that a government report is essentially labeling American left-wing voices and groups agents of foreign influence. And here is why that matters. One day after that report was released, the Republican-led House Ways and Means Committee subpoenaed 3 left-leaning nonprofits. People's Forum, which is a New York-based activist hub, Breakthrough News, an independent media outlet, and Tricontinental, Institute for Social Research, a think tank. This is what these subpoenas demand: internal communication, organizational records, and financial documents as well, all by the 7th of August. The committee says it is a tax inquiry into the group's funding as a part of a broader investigation into, what they allege is foreign influence by China in United States politics. It says it's examining whether existing laws governing tax-exempt organizations adequately protect against foreign influence, and whether the Congress needs to change those laws. This is what the critics say. That congressional move is part of something much larger: a coordinated effort by the Trump administration to brand any democratic socialist, any anti-war and anti-racist movement as un-American and as traitors, to crack down on dissent one single group at a time. Joining me now is Manolo de los Santos, the executive director of the People's Forum, a New York-based organization focused on political education, grassroots organizing, and international solidarity. Thank you so much for joining me in what I'm sure is a crazy moment for you.
Thanks for having me, Jacob. It is crazy, but it's also the sign of the times.
What's it like to be in the middle of all of this?
Well, I would say that we're actually living in the middle of seeing all of Trump's failures. This report, these attacks, these attempts at repression are really just an attempt to cover their own failures in trying to turn back the tide on history.
They're coming after you, but why don't you do me a favor in the audience and explain for people who don't know People's Forum here in New York, what does your group actually do?
I mean, we're organizers. We're activists who are on the ground almost every day, whether it's organizing to support families who are being deported by ICE, whether it's going against the genocide in Gaza. It's about standing up to different sanctions and blockades that the U.S. government imposes on people around the world, including Cuba. I mean, we're just literally pointing out injustice where we see it. That is our daily work. And all of a sudden, that becomes an un-American activity. And we've seen this script before. It's not new. It has a long history in the United States. But it's taking a dangerous turn now, because it's basically a wholesale attack on our free speech.
Are you agents of foreign influence?
I'm an agent of my own conscience. I think I've been moved constantly by the belief that the United States has to do better, and that we can change the reality in this country.
It's not the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, that People's Forum was actually subpoenaed. It was first subpoenaed in September 2025. What are they demanding? What are they looking for, do you think?
Well, they're looking for something that only exists in their imaginations. Ultimately, our biggest point has been is that from the beginning, their requests have been framed as, why do you oppose Trump's war on Iran? Why do you oppose our policy towards Palestine? Why do you oppose our stance on ICE? It's essentially going to the question of what our political positions are.
Are they asking that specifically?
I will share the correspondence with you. It basically goes to these questions. And that's why we won't surrender our free speech rights. If we were to accept what this committee is demanding from us, it essentially would be to accept that people in the United States have no right to protest, no right to organize, no right to express their differences with the U.S. government.
We've talked a lot about in this broadcast investigations as a form of attempts to silence dissent, to silence political speech. Is that what's happening here in your estimation?
Absolutely. Again, I would say that the Trump administration is mired in a series of failures. It has been incapable of convincing the American people that deporting millions of immigrants is the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it goes after the people who organize in defense of immigrant families. It hasn't been able to convince millions of Americans that bombing Iran, bombing schoolgirls in Iran is a good idea. So the fact that we're organizing protests against that is all of a sudden an issue. The fact that we stand with the Palestinian people, that we say no to a blockade against Cuba, these are not fringe positions. These are the positions of majority of Americans right now.
Certainly in the Democratic Party, and yes, outside of the
across
Democratic
the
Party
spectrum.
As well. You're right. You're right. The House Ways and Means Committee chairman, Jason Smith, I want to be specific about what he said. He accused your group of failing to produce, quote, a single responsive document after earlier information requests, as well as, quote, using tax-exempt status to spread foreign propaganda while acting as a foreign agent. You want to respond to him?
Well, our lawyers have been responding to the committee consistently over the time. We haven't failed to respond once to their letters. In fact, I would say that they have failed to actually provide a meaningful response to our lawyers' comments, because all we're saying is we have a right to defend free speech. We have a right to protest. We have a right to organize. What's stopping us? It's our consciousness that's moving us to say that these things are wrong in our society.
The State Department report on Cuba has been described by some people as a blacklist. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely. I mean, you said it yourself just a day after we were subpoenaed by Congress. But I think it's definitely being used, and it's a very expansive list. I mean, it's not just us on the left. It's I would say it's a list of anyone who might have, by chance, had some connection to Cuba at some point in their life. It includes people who haven't even gone to Cuba. It includes groups that do anything but Cuba work or Cuba solidarity work. And it's a dangerous trend because it's essentially creating the impression that anything we do in the United States on domestic issues now has to be a Cuban plot. And I think that we're mostly concerned that, again, it's not just about us, but this is the beginning of something worse for the rest of society if we don't do something about it now.
I want to read more from the report because it also names the DSA, which the mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, is a member of. Nithya Raman, who's running to be the mayor of Los Angeles, is a member of. And the report also singles out Karen Bass, who's her opponent in the mayoral election in Los Angeles. It says that the mayor is an instrument of Cuba. It concedes, by the way, though, this is what it says. Let's put this up. That the DSA, it was not shaped by direct and tangible influence of the Cuban government itself. Instead, as the ideological inheritor of the Cuban influence radicalism of the post-1960s left, it freely embraced the policy agenda and worldview of its own accord. So it's clearly not, I mean, it's saying something and then it's saying it's not saying the same thing.
I mean, it wasn't the Cubans who killed George Floyd. It wasn't the Cubans who left my generation with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debts individually. It wasn't the Cubans who created home inequality, housing inequality. It wasn't the Cubans who created poverty in this country. These are all the reasons that actually move us to have to fight in this country. I mean, this country, which is celebrating 250 years now of independence, has an unsettled debt to its own people, particularly black and brown people in this country. It has to answer up to that. That is not a foreign plot. That is a question of urgency for the American people themselves.
At the heart of all of this, as you have said, is real issues that real people are going through. And as it relates to Cuba, you have traveled to Cuba and you have seen what real life is like on the ground, and you have seen the effects of the embargo on the Cuban people. What would ending the embargo meaningfully mean to the people of Cuba today?
I mean, honestly, it would just mean the ability to develop their own country on their own terms, the ability to have medicine in their hospitals, to have school supplies in their schools, to have fuel, essentially, for their children to be able to go to school every morning. We often don't understand in the U.S. how badly we impact daily life in Cuba because of this blockade, which you also mentioned the fuel embargo of just the last 6 months. It's ground life on the island to a halt. And it's heartbreaking every time I go, essentially to deliver humanitarian aid, when we have to ask ourselves, why do we have to deliver this aid to begin with? Mm-hmm. Why this country, which is only 90 miles away, can't have normal trading relations with Cuba? It's insane.
It is crazy to stand there in the Keys, by the way, and look out and realize how close, what kind of neighbors we actually are with the Cuban people, yet how far away our relations seem. What happens if you don't, before you go, what happens if you don't, if Congress doesn't like the answers? You said they've been written and submitted through your lawyers. If Congress doesn't like the answers you provided to the committee, are you worried about what happens next? What do you know about what might happen next?
We're not worried. We have a great team of lawyers who are going to keep fighting on. We're planning to continue to resist and to continue to struggle. I think we have, again, a very important sense of consciousness of the need for justice in this country. So we have a long list of things that we have to continue fighting for and struggling for.
Manolo de los Santos, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I really
for having
appreciate
me,
it. Come
Jacob.
back again soon and keep us posted with what's happening
For sure.
with these subpoenas. Again, Manolo de los Santos, Executive Director of the People's Forum.